Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red. Let's move on. Let's get to throwing the bones. We're going to go to the defensive side of the ball. And same thing here. Let's go down the left column.
Guys, your graphics are elite. What is going on right now? Elite graphics.
There you go. Graphic
Can
designer.
you say that with a little more of an East Coast accent, Dave?
Really fast and
elite.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I really want to say here is that, Hunky's got some really elite graphics going on right now. It's one of the things that most impresses me is just the eliteness that he has going on with what he's putting up on the screen.
Well, I think everyone on this, everyone here is elite right now. I mean, Jim, you do elite things on Twitter and Husk guys, man, you guys are elite with pipeline jerky, which is elite jerky. Let's go to the first team here, and we've got the little skull and crossbones up there. They won't be wearing black shirts this week, but we always want to address the first team as black shirts. And so we have Stephon Wynn, last year's transfer from Alabama, but now with a full offseason under his belt, 6'3", 305. Ty Robinson, we have him as a defensive tackle. So Stephon Wynn, nose tackle. Ty Robinson, defensive tackle. Blaise Gunnerson. I don't know if you consider this a position change or not, but at one point we were using the word edge. Now we've got jacks. Well, we moved Gunnerson to defensive end, and at 6'6", 250, he's not small. So that would be kind of your D-line there, Wynn, Robinson, Gunnerson. Jimari Butler, we have starting at jacks. Luke Reimer, who's had some injuries, but right now we have him listed at linebacker with Chief Borders, the transfer from Florida, as the other linebacker. Rover, and I saw you said this one, Jim, and I forgot that we were calling it, or that I'd seen it as Rover. That takes me back to the 90s. I mean, we used to have Rover backs back then, and then it kind of went away. But Omar Brown, we have listed as the Rover. Cornerbacks, we have Quinton Newsome. I mean, he's solid at one spot, and it's really who's going to be the corner opposite of him. Right now, we put Javier Morton at that. And then at safeties, we have Malcolm Hartzog, who just had an outstanding freshman season last year, and then Myles Farmer. And listed at the very bottom is out for this is linebacker Nick Henrich. No doubt it would most likely be Henrich and Reimer, but again, who knows? I mean, Borders is a formidable opponent there for that position too. So we'll do it the same way, just like we did last time. Jim, you take a look at that left column, the first teamers. What's the jumps off the page right away?
So I'm going to take the first one there, Stephon Wynn. If he can be big, and it sounds like if you read the article this morning on Husker Online, he had a dominating scrimmage on Saturday. If he can be now, he's a year in the program. He's got time. I think he came in June of last year. So he's got, time under his feet in the new program with Campbell there at strength conditioning. So I like Stephon Wynn out of the gates there at that nose tackle spot. Omar Brown's banged up, it sounds like. I hope he can play on Saturday. Probably my number 2 guy on that list there. If he can be an impact player for us, and he was, highly touted coming out of Northern Iowa 2 years ago, at that Rover spot, that's a nice look for him, I think, with that size and that physicality.
Mm-hmm. And again, like we talked about on offense, look at the balance of returning players with transfers. Stephon Wynn there, like we said, he was a transfer from Alabama a year ago. But one of the things is if you're transferring in the summer, that's a problem, I think, from a development standpoint. It's hard to acclimate that quickly. And I'll temper any fans after this semester gets done that say, hey, we need to go in the portal and get 7 and 10 guys in. There's no reason to think that someone's going to acclimate any faster after this spring either. We know the importance of practice to this coaching staff. And the guys that are here right now, I mean, those are the guys I'm ready to go into battle with come fall. And short of having an absolute, just real need at one position here or there, for the most part, I'm hoping that most of the positions can be filled with the guys we have there. But Wynn's a transfer, but there's Robinson, Gunnerson, and Butler, and Reimer. Those are guys that have been through the program multiple years. Chief Border comes in. You have Omar as a transfer. Quinton Newsome's been here forever. And, Hartzog's coming straight here, and same with Farmer. Morton was a transfer. But, Dave, let's go back to the talent thing. We talked about talent on offense. You look at this here, talent-wise. I mean, what jumps off the page to you?
Yeah, I think, I kind of love the Chief Borders pickup. I watched a lot of his tape. I find him to be hopefully instant impact, like you said. I'm a huge fan of Reimer and Henrik. I hope they can kind of reclaim some of that magic they had from 2 years ago when they were number 1 and number 2 in the Big Ten in tackles for most of the season 2 years ago. And, last year, I think they just both battled injuries and, there's a whole host of other things. But I just think Reimer's got a real nose for the ball and it's fantastic. I think Tommy Hill's the one in the second team that I just feel like he's got so much talent. He's going to find his way onto that first team. But other than that, I really like Quinton Newsome. I like Myles Farmer. I think they're strong secondary players for us that it's great to see him back. I think that's where the transfer portal gets you so discombobulated because so many people come and go. And so I feel like seeing a stable of folks that, if I'm adding that up correctly, 5, 6, 7 of them, like you just said, Honky, have been on the team, and that cohesion I think is important. Yeah,
it's silly when people bring up previous stops that Rule's been at when you just look at the situations that they're in, the lack of depth, the lack of talent in some cases here, and what he's coming into here. I mean, there are guys that have been through the program 3, 4, 5 years, and he's kept them around. The biggest surprise to me is I would have told you 6 months ago that we need to have, at that time, I'm Mickey Joseph or Bill Bush. We need to keep those guys around or we're going to lose the team. We're going to lose all these solid pieces. And it's a real true credit to what Coach Rule did. I think it's a credit to Trev in identifying Rule when he hired him, is that we can bring somebody in. He can make changes. He's going to bring in the staff he needs to bring in and do all those things. And at the same token, you treat the players in the right way, and you're not seeing guys just flee just to flee. And get them through the process, go through an off season, and I like where we can be at. Now, one of the positions, Jim, jacks, is that essentially, is that the edge position just being called a different name, or
no? I think
you're familiar kind of with what jacks is going to be.
So I think it's actually Jack, but it's
the Jack, yeah.
The Jack, yeah. I think it's an all-encompassing linebacker who can be moved around to inside, outside, and on the line as a defensive end. So I think you guys listened to Tony White, I think last week, talk about the position. It's all over. So you can be in space one time as Jimari Butler covering a tight end, and then next thing you know, your hands in the dirt and you're 3rd down and 7. You have to get to the passer. So it's a very versatile, multifaceted. I kind of worry a little bit with the kind of the mental overload, that they're going to be taking on. These guys are former defensive ends, outside linebackers, and they're going to be doing it all now. But I think the athletic ability of Jimari Butler. He's having a great camp, and then MJ Sherman had a great Saturday practice as well. So I like the two guys at that position there, and we'll see. I mean, I'm kind of curious to see how things plays out. I've never seen this defense other than outside of a few teams that play it, and so for us, where these pieces fit, I don't know. I mean, Malcolm Hartzog, do you guys like him at safety? I mean, were you crazy about him as a cornerback last year? I mean, it was like, for me, it was like, he's like 5'6". Is he gonna transition to a safety?
Hey, he's 5'9". I'm 5'9", Jim. All right, so I take offense to that comment. And first of all, he was a ball hawk too. I mean, how many interceptions did he have last year? So yeah, I know. I'm giving you a hard time about the.
No, I get it. Comment. He probably is used to that as well, being that size, and I think he's a great player too. I just don't know how great does that transition over to a safety spot where he's coming down the line and filling up gaps. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
To answer your question, I didn't know anything about him at all, really, until all of a sudden against Indiana, he's returning a punt for a touchdown. And sometimes with players, they just need an opportunity. And so what it does tell me is that he took an opportunity and he made something of it. And that does say a lot, because there's guys that get opportunities and you don't see anything with it. The jack position there, I don't know why I type jacks, but the jack position, it sounds a lot to me like what the edge was, but different defenses. So, putting them in different spots. My only concern with it, and I'll use O'Shawn as an example last year, was if someone's really good at something, like think of Trev. Trev was an outside linebacker in a 5'2", and then his senior year, they moved him to a 4'3", and he was no longer an outside linebacker. He won the Butkus Award, and I've always said he never should have won the Butkus. It should have been the Lombardi, which Wistrom won a few years later playing the exact same position. He wasn't a linebacker anymore. He was a D end. His hand was on the ground. He rushed, and when he rushed, he got 15 sacks. And sometimes what I hope is, let's say Butler, I don't care who it is, Butler, Sherman, whoever, let's say they are they're a stud at blitzing and getting in the backfield and causing havoc back there. boy, I wouldn't want to take him out of that, take that player out of that position, start dropping him back a whole lot. Sometimes if that's what you do good, do it. Don't get too cute with guys. And I thought with O'Shawn, there were times those first few games, my gosh, you'd almost never see him in the backfield because he was always dropping back into coverage. I was like, this is the number one guy in the portal that we got. And we're never seeing him in the backfield.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point on O'Shawn, and I think you saw that shift a lot. Like midseason, is like, why doesn't he have any sacks? And then he had some sacks because they switched the defense for him, and they allowed him to rush. And like you saw him come off the edge, how explosive he was coming off the edge. So that fits a tough balance to figure out, but.
And it is a defense, and to your point too, Jim. I mean, it is a different defense than what we saw last year too. So we'll kind of see how that all plays out. But there's some size there we're going to need. D-line wise, essentially, we kind of have two defensive line bodies on the field in this defense, the way that this looks, or potentially three. I guess you look at the second team here, and Judy would have one of those bodies. But like at this first team, you've got two big defensive tackle guys, Robinson and Wynn. And then Gunnerson at 6'6", 250 in the DN spot. That's a very Grant Wistrom size kind of defensive end guy. Doesn't have to necessarily be a third 300-pound guy on the field. And I've always said that with like the difference between running a 3-man front or a 4-man front is a difference in depth. You may not need as many true defensive linemen in a 4-man if you just have two big bodies in it, and then two 6'5", 250 DNs on the field, and that can start to spread out your depth a little bit. Because let's get to the depth. Let's look at the second string. Nose tackle, we have Nash Hutmacher over there, 6'4", 330, and that might be too big. I've seen that he's lost some weight. I was just using the numbers that I had from earlier, so that might be a big number for him. D tackle, Raquan Buckley, and I really like the potential of this guy. He's a sophomore, 6'6", 290. Elijah Judy at DN, so backing up Blaise Gunnerson, but here's a good example of a different body type. Gunnerson starting at 6'6", 250. Here's Elijah Judy at 6'3", 300, and he's the transfer from A&M. So you can have different size, different style bodies at that position. The jack backing up Butler we have is MJ Sherman, so another transfer from Georgia, junior, 6'3", 250. Linebacker Garrett Snodgrass, and then you mentioned him earlier, Jim, John Bullock. So here's another one of the walk-ons. And then at Rover, the backup to Omar Brown, we have is Isaac Gifford. Cornerback is Corey Collier, transferred from Florida, and then Tommy Hill. You were talking about him, Dave. Last but not least, safety Deshaun Singleton, and then Phelan Sanford, a senior, another one of the walk-ons. So I'll start with you, Jim. Again, it's a mix. It's walk-ons, it's transfers, it's guys that have been in the program. What do you think of in that second team?
Whew. I mean, the obvious to me is the defensive line. I mean, if there's a spot in our defense, or actually in our team that concerns me the most, it's that group right there. I mean, I kind of agree with you, Honky. Raquan Buckley was a guy that we were excited about getting out of Michigan, as 2 years ago, and it's his third year now, and he's got to take that leap, not just for himself as a player, but for this defense to have some depth and to rotate around that defensive line. And I imagine we're going to get somebody in the portal as well, how good they're going to be and how they're going to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
We saw with Wynn last year, and the guy from, was it Drew from Texas?
Yeah, Drew from, you got to get here.
He got here late, and it didn't really contribute too much. So I think that's my kind of eye-opening thing is we got, Judy's a transfer from Texas A&M. He's playing well so far, but again, we don't know until we actually see it on the field, right? And you're right with Nash. I mean, hopefully he has some flexibility now with his new strength and conditioning that again under Campbell. Can he play sideline to sideline? I don't know. So that's concerning to me for sure. Is that depth there on the second unit that kind of pops out.
Mm-hmm.
One more on that list, John Bullock. I mentioned him before. The way he's moving around, the speed he can give. I mean so from what I understand, it's the inside linebacker on this defense that is really kind of the heart and soul of the defense. They've got to be able to beat the offensive linemen. They're not getting blocked, so they're gonna have to beat them to get to the ball carrier. So you're gonna have to move. And I think John Bullock's a guy who can do that.
Mm-hmm. Dave, what do you think here, second string?
Yeah, I think, Tommy Hill's one I mentioned I'm excited about. I think Nash, it's exciting to think about him kind of making that leap too. Snodgrass I've always liked. I just always felt he has a ton of promise. I think to your point on what you're saying, Jim, on making that leap, into junior year, again, I'm anchoring a lot on what these pipeline guys have been telling me. I've just been learning a lot from these guys and how they came to be in the 90s. It's such an interesting time, like comparing that time to now. It's obviously dramatically different. Everything's different. There's transfer portal and all sorts of stuff. But, they said back in those days, you never got to play until you were a junior, a senior, or a fifth year. And like guys like Brendan Stye, who became an All-American, he backed up Will Shields for 2 seasons and never played. And then, but by his junior year, he was fantastic. And that was the year, like junior to senior years, when all these guys made these leaps. So I think I'm kind of studying these guys' ages as I look through these lists to say, like, I do think there's an element of like, maybe these guys do make a big leap sophomore to junior year because it's 2 years in the system. They have 2 years of weight training, and they're now 21, 22 years old. So, a lot of those names that we've been talking about, it's like, maybe they didn't play well last year, but, with another off season, do they make that leap junior year? And in particular, some of the names, guys like Myles Farmer, who've played a ton, I'm looking back on the first, team, but those guys who have played a ton, who have so much experience and then get to make that, sophomore to junior year leap. I don't know. I just think that's an interesting kind of perspective of like, we put so much pressure on guys to be like, all right, play right now, be awesome right now, or like, we're done with you. But yeah, who knows? I hope there's a lot of surprises on this list.
Dave, you get to talk with the pipeline, the 94 pipeline on Friday night. And I think, one of the questions that you can talk with them about too is those guys understood their roles on the team. And that's as important as anything. You mentioned the 0 sacks that they gave up in that season. That's impressive. But the starting tight end that year was Matt Shaw, and he had 0 catches his entire career. Never caught a single pass at Nebraska. And I'm sure he would have liked to at some point. I'm sure he ran routes in practice, and I'm sure he was capable of catching a ball, but it just never worked out that way for him. But he still understood his route, or what his role was. And when you get down to the end of that game and they're running options and short side options, who's the tight end that they're running all those to? It's Matt Shaw. So can these guys find whatever that role is? If you're a defensive tackle, if you're Ty Robinson and you came here and you're a big 4-star recruit, but maybe your job here is take up a double team, man. You're not going to make the play, but you're going to allow for the play to happen because you're taking on that double team. You're going to take on 3 guys on a play. Whatever that role is, be that role. And if we have role players and we've got guys that are getting developed and guys that are selfless and playing for the team, I think that's going to be a lot of similarities to what those guys on Friday night are going to talk about what that team was like. And so, every team's got their stars and they're great guys, but you can only have so many of those, and it's all the other filler, and it's the guys doing their jobs and making plays. I want to hit this before we get to the last part, which is kind of previewing the spring game itself. But speaking of defense, this was a situational football situation. I know you're going to love this, Jim, because you and I have talked about this 100 times over the years. But this is what Coach Rule talked about on Saturday, situationally, but also talking about how the defense had success, did a good job in the scrimmage, but then made a kind of a bad mistake at the end.
We're putting them in a lot of situations. Like, we finished today. It was, I think, what was Keith? It was like 9 seconds, balls on the 9, no timeouts, you're down 4, and like, they're having to process that real quickly. Like, okay, like how many downs do I have? I have 2 downs. And then we didn't score. And then we had a guy on defense punch a guy on offense. And then it was a flag, right? So, and I won't say who it was, but that happened, right? And so it's not real cool. And I'm not the cool guy, like, because the defense thinks they won. I'm like, no, untimed down, right? And I scream at the defense and I make them run a gas, or the coaches too, and they go sit on the sideline. And then there's 1 play left, and Jeff scrambles around. He hits someone, Marcus, I think, in the end zone for touchdown. And I told the offense, if you score, run right in the locker room. They run right in the locker room, and the defense has to stand there, right? Well, the defense won the day, right? The defense won the whole scrimmage. But at the end of the day, they didn't make the play at the end to win it, right? And it wasn't anything physical. It was just mental, our awareness of the situation, our awareness of doing the right thing. And so I believe that good teams do good things and bad teams do bad things.
Okay, first off, just inject whatever he just said, like put it right into the veins. I mean, this is 5-6 years of us doing this damn show. It's been how many times? It's not about talent. We're good enough to beat that team, but you'd always find ways to blow it up. You'd win on the stat sheet, but you'd lose on the scoreboard. And good teams do good things and bad teams do bad things. When I hear that, I'm glad to see the defense make the improvements. They played a better scrimmage than they did 2 weeks earlier. They won the scrimmage, and yet You still make the bad mistake at the end. But I love that we're finding that out now in April, not waiting until, we're in the Twin Cities playing in front of, a live audience. And I think that that's going to pay dividends. The way that they're practicing, the way they're putting quarterbacks live, the way that they're tackling, the physicality of it. I've talked about green jerseys until I've been blue in the face in the past. Everything I'm seeing right now in situational football, that's been our issue. And he seems to be attacking the right things. Jim?
I think that he probably, after that play, ran up to the defense and said, "You blew it!" in the best Billy Harrison voice. I mean, I can imagine how just pissed off he was, where he's, you guys had everything right, and you threw a punch to ruin it. I mean, what have you guys not learned from the last 2 years of losing close games to say, stop doing dumb shit? Like,
now, how about this though, Jim? Let's flip it on the other side. You're probably right that he was outwardly pissed. I bet inwardly he loved it. They created the best coachable move there. Like, if we go through practice and you guys are just awesome all the time, that sucks. I need things to coach you up on. I wanted an opportunity, and I love what he does. I'm going to show another clip here in a second. I love how he creates scenarios. For instance, it gets kind of crappy here in Nebraska every once in a while, a little bit cold. So why do we have so much trouble when we get to the end of the season? We have to play at Wisconsin or Michigan or Iowa, and we act like we've never been outside before. Well, Coach Rules addressed that.
Really happy to get out there and scrimmage in that weather. And I told the guys on offense, they're in white. I said, hey, you guys, in your mind, you're at Michigan State late in the year and it's cold. On defense, I told the guys, like, hey, you're playing Iowa at home day after Thanksgiving. So, I'm always trying to cast a vision for, everyone kept asking me if we're going to go inside. We're going to go inside. I said, well, if lightning hits, but other than that, we're going to be outside. That's where we play.
Dave, I love him. I don't care. I got nothing else.
I think that, well, so here's on the punch component, flip side. And again, my brain is just deep in the pipeline stuff. And Zadishka and Graham were on they did a podcast yesterday. Mm-hmm. They took a completely different approach because, like, so much of the backlash on Twitter was like, oh my God, they haven't learned from their mistakes. And like, I can't believe they're still punching each other. Those guys loved it because they were like, we fought every day in practice. Every single day, Christian and Jason Peter were fist fighting somebody on the offensive line. And that's the like intensity level that they're like, yes, finally they're punching each other in the face. Like, that's what we've needed. So I don't know. I think there's an element there where, like, I think I agree with everything you're saying. He like handled it perfectly and he gets teachable moments and he's coaching them. Cause like that it's a delicate balance where, like, definitively the thing that has been broken about this program is the attention to detail. So he's given that opportunity to fix the attention to detail, but they're also have enough fire in their bellies to punch each other in the face. So it's like a great, like, two sides of things of like, don't do that, but also, like, keep next time choke him out, and then they got to like run stairs and stuff. But yeah, I think it's, I guess that the macro look at Rule is everything kind of you're highlighting is like, the closeness that we've felt the last few years, it just felt like something that just needed like a better manager, a better leader of like just a little more attention to special teams. Just, can we make some PATs and some field goals? Can we not have stupid penalties? Can we not have like, a ton of holding calls? So there's that element where it feels like Rule has like the professional experience, both, at Baylor as well as like, the pros and everything else that you're like, okay, he's going to pay attention to the right things. He's going to put them in the opportunity to succeed. And we have the right players. So yeah, I think it's like, he hits the high note every time he goes out. The guy's like a brilliant panderer. He's got the whole gospel thing going on. Steven Costello in the house. Appreciate that.
Buy some pipeline jerky, guys. Stuff is
dude,
awesome.
Coming in, baby. Yeah,
absolutely.
Man. Absolutely. I've been like munching on it all night. We got some pork going
we've
on.
We've got a bunch of comments, but every time I put one up, it covered Jim's face, and I don't want to upset the guests.
It's so handsome.
We're not upset, Rob. If the people are typing, post it. We want to.
No. It's good. A lot of the commentary is just around what you guys are talking about. Talking about missing Damian Daniels last year. We've got a few things up there too, and
I agree.
Going back to the defensive line too. I didn't really get to chime in there at all, but that's okay. One of the things too about looking at first and second team is that we could have almost just removed those labels too, because I think Rule was really clear the other day that, you know, first and second team, they're going to be rotating guys in and out so often during those that, you know, we may see a lot of guys maybe not getting as many plays as we're used to on defense. That's just like an opinion. I'm kind of doing the math in my head. If they're rotating guys in and out, especially like at that jack position, you know, going through Tony White's defense, changing up looks, fronts, everything like that, blitzes, which they're going to be doing. I mean, it's going to be crazy to see, because while he said he wants the ones against ones and the twos against twos, it also kind of contradicts what he said earlier in the week about the defense, where they're going to be switching a lot of guys up. So to me, it'll be interesting to see those rotations and how they're lining up. And like, are they going to be having guys that look like they're going to be blitzing that are going to drop back into coverage? Or, you know, maybe there's some guy that looks like he's going to be in coverage that one guy's dropping back and the other guy's like passing him on the side, going right up the middle for the blitz. So I'm excited to see kind of what this new look defense should look like, especially because White said he's just letting these guys go. Like, he's giving them like minimal defensive scheme at this point and just kind of letting them play, because that to me says that he's letting these guys use the athletic ability that they have already. So
good.
I just wanted to get that in.
Let them play. Let them think less. They took some of the install out over the course of spring ball, and play fast. That's important.